Hi everyone, having a real good day. Beautiful weather out here. I'm just walking along the River Soar, heading in towards Barrow upon Soar in Leicestershire. So, I want to talk about a question that came up on one of my posts. I had someone ask me, do I call Letstab59 Keith Sir? Well, no I don't. First of all, even if we were serving, we would have both been in the science mess, and I would only have addressed him as Sir when it was appropriate. And the reason I say that, when I got promoted to Sergeant and got into the science mess, I was in Catterick at Gaza Barracks. Well, I was actually in East Lines, but the science mess was a joint science mess for 15 field workshops and the medical regiment that was in Gaza Barracks. I can't remember which one it was now. But when I went to see the RSM to go into the science mess, because you go and ask permission to go into the science mess, the RSM said to me, the only person you call Sir in the science mess is myself. Everyone else should introduce themselves by their name. Well, most of them did, except for one. He was our chief clerk in 15 field workshops, and his name was Pete Buckley. And when I was in the mess, I went up to him and said, all right, Pete, oh, you can address me as staff. So I looked at him and said, I got told by the RSM the only person that I addressed by their rank or appointment is the RSM himself. Well, I will deem when it's suitable for you to call me by my name. So I thought nothing of it. I thought, yeah, as most of us would have done, plank. You know. But it was after about 2 months, I think, I was in the science mess. I'd bought some of the other boys a beer, and Staff Barclay walked in, and he looked at me and he says to me, Nobby, I've decided that you can now call me Pete. So I looked him square in the eye and I said, well, I've decided you can call me Sergeant Clark. And the whole mess erupted into laughter. So yeah, no, I wouldn't call Keith Sir. I don't think he'd like it to begin with. Secondly, I think Trace around would probably tear him a new backside. But there you go. But on the issue of people holding their rank, I have come across 2 retired lieutenant colonels in my time. One of them while I was still serving, and the other one is a very good friend of mine. He's a retired lieutenant colonel, bloke called Tony Workman. Tony was with the REME, went through the ranks as a recovery mechanic, and it wasn't until years after I'd been working with him with the BBC that I found out he got an OBE as well. But the other one that I came across, and it was absolutely hilarious, I was the court usher at a court martial in Paderborn. And if you know anything about a court martial, you'll know that the only person that can move around during a court martial, around the court itself, is the court's usher. And that's pass documents and so on to the defence and the prosecution. And there was a bloke there called Mr. Ballenden. Now, if any of you have ever watched Rumpole of the Bailey, Mr. Ballenden looked and sounded just like Rumpole of the Bailey. And the court martial went on for about a week. It was one of the lads from the REME workshops in 39 Heavy. He was actually the Army's middleweight boxing champion. And 5 blokes had gone downtown into Paderborn on the lash with him. Something happened. They decided to try and jump him. And the next thing you knew, yeah, Steve was putting his 5 lads on the ground. One of them being his tiffy. And it was his tiffy that wanted to 252 him or charge him. Well, when Steve went up in front of the Colonel, he decided he wasn't going to take the Colonel's award. He was going to elect to go by a court-martial. And he got himself this civilian lawyer called Mr. Ballenden. So I used to have a good laugh with Mr. Ballenden, great bloke. But it was towards the back end of the court-martial that someone came to see me and said, there's someone outside that wants to speak to a Lieutenant Colonel Ballenden. I said, I haven't got Lieutenant Colonel Ballenden, I've got Mr. Ballenden. He said, well, this bloke reckons that he used to be his provost sergeant when he was in Allenbrook Barracks with the Colonel. The Colonel apparently had been the commanding officer of the Light Infantry, or one of the battalions of the Light Infantry. Now, the person that came to see him I knew very well because he was the chairman of the Royal British Legion in Paderborn. And you couldn't miss him, Brian. He had this huge moustache, white as anything, but it had two beehives, one on either side. And of course, when I tipped up, good morning. When I tipped up, I saw Brian. Oh, Brian, what's up, mate? He says, you're after a Lieutenant Colonel Ballenden. I haven't got a Lieutenant Colonel. I said, I've got a Mr. Ballenden. And we just discussed it, and he told me about the fact that Mr. Ballenden had been the CO of the Light Infantry. So I was in the restroom. Mr. Ballenden came in, and I immediately snapped up. I'd got my number 2 dress cap on, and I threw him a salute. And he said to me, what do you think you're doing? I said, sorry, sir. So I've just found out that you're a Lieutenant Colonel. He said, I'm not a Lieutenant Colonel. I'm a civilian. I said, well, I've got someone outside, sir, that wants to speak to you. And of course, Mr. Ballenden and Brian got together, and they were reminiscing about the days when they were in Allenbrook Barracks together. And I listened to them. It was a right old laugh. And Mr. Ballenden said to me, he said, I don't do this holding my rank, I'm a civilian now. But when the court case was over, Mr. Ballenden came up to me and said, Sergeant Clark, I'm not saying that you'll ever get in trouble. He said, but here's my card. And I kept that card for many a year, just in case. Because Mr. Ballenden tied the judge advocate in knots, and the prosecuting officer, who was a young captain, hadn't been a captain long apparently, but he was doing the prosecution, and Mr. Ballenden tied him in absolute knots. So I kept his card, just in case. But Tony Workman, like I say, Tony's a retired Lieutenant Colonel from the Remy. Tony was the person that got us involved with initially working with the BBC at all the golf events. And it all came about because Tony was good friends with the commentator Peter Allis, man who's known as the voice of golf. And Tony had gone with Peter to a dinner night with the BBC, and we sat there, and the production manager for BBC Golf was going on about the fact that he couldn't get certain information. So Tony was earwigging, looked over and said to Paul Fraser, who was the production manager at the time, said, I got a bunch of lads that could do that. So Paul said, how do you mean? He said, right, they're all either serving soldiers or ex-soldiers. They all play golf. He said, if you want guys to go out on the course and get the information and radio it through to you, he said, I'm pretty sure we can do it. Well, that was in 2000. And here I am, 2025. I'm still doing golf for what is now the DP World Tour, because BBC lost the contract and went to Sky. I've also worked with NBC TV, the American channel. But Tony has only ever, I've heard him pull out his rank in those years, and that was with a new production manager for the BBC, a woman called Barbara. And Barbara was stood there and giving Tony a load of lip. And the next thing I knew, good morning, the next thing I know, Tony's actually turned around and said, I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel. I will not be spoken to in that manner. And Barbara relented, and realised that she picked on the wrong person. But to show how Tony was, when I got diagnosed with cancer in 2006, I contacted Tony to inform him that I wouldn't be able to do my golfing duties. At that time we used to do about 11 events a year. And Tony said to me, don't worry about it, Nobby. He said, you let me know when you feel you're fit enough and you're back on the team. And sure enough, following year I rang him up and said to him, right, I'm back, boss. I said, the only thing is, I said, I'm not able to get to the events because my car, I said, I'm not allowed to drive at the moment. Well, Tony drove out, he lives in Andover, drove up to Leicestershire, picked me up, drove me all the way up to Inverness to go to the Scotch Open. And then from there we went, good morning ladies. From there we went on to the Open at St Andrews. And most of the time, me and Tony used to go up early. We get everything prepared for when the Remy guys, because it was the Remy Golf Association that got involved. So we used to tip up, normally at a barracks, because we managed to get accommodation in the barracks, and we'll get everything squared away. Camp beds, blokes had to bring their own sleeping bags. Sometimes we actually had beds and bunks. But like I say, holding rank, I know that I think it's if you're a major or above, when you retire, you can hold your rank and use it in your communication and so on. Some people do, a lot of people don't. But it'd be like me turning around and saying, well, you got to call me staff. Yeah, I don't do that. Yeah, I was a staff sergeant, but I'm not going to sort of thrust it down people's throats. So that's the answer to, do I call Keith sir? No, I don't. I call him a lot of other things, but I don't call him sir. No, me and Keith are brothers, real good brothers. Yeah, we've met through YouTube. I've got the greatest respect for him and his wife Tracy. I think they're absolutely lovely. Stuff that they've done has been really, really taxing. They managed to do various tabs, long distance, raise loads of money. So I've got the greatest respect for him, not only because of that, but because he's a good egg. Anyway, that's enough of that. I just wanted to answer that question about, do I call him sir? No, I don't. So, like I've said before, if you're new to the channel and you think, oh, there's some good stuff there, please consider subscribing. If you do subscribe and you send me a message, I will guarantee you get a message back because I'm kind and courteous. It's called good manners. So, like Keith always says, stay safe, especially with the way that the weather is at the moment. If you're in the areas where there's flooding, please bear that in mind. Yeah, don't do anything stupid and get yourself into any sort of danger. That's the big thing. So I'm going to crack on. I'm just entering into the village up the road from me called Corn. I've gone through Barrow, in through Corn. I'm off down to Swiddy and then back into Mount Salt. So you all take care, stay safe, and let's tab.